Hello everybody and welcome to episode 9 of building an Imperial Refinery in LEGO. Today's episode I get a really nice amount of progress done on the front half of the MOC, getting a really good portion of terrain done, and a awesome amount of progress on that right wall that will intersect the exterior of the pit, and I'm loving how that is turning out. And the final bit of progress, what I'm most excited for, is the big pillar that is in the front of the MOC. I have almost fully completed with the exception of a couple of details. So without further ado, let's get right into the progress. Getting straight into the main progress of this episode, the pillar right here. Now, this turned out really nicely, and I love how it looks. Now, taking a closer look, there are a few small details that I still have to add in, but overall this is complete. Now, starting with this top section here, the angled part, if I remove this panel, which is very simply connected with a ball joint here, you can see it is pretty complex, just connected to that main wall pillar that goes along the pit with a couple of snot techniques. It's mostly up here. I have a brick going all the way through, and then this is locked in, and you can see it's not going anywhere without the rest of the pit. So, secure enough for me. Now, the connection between this large light bluish gray pillar and the top part is just a couple of brackets that are connected to some Technic bricks, and technically it's probably not the best way to do that, but it is secure enough to hold this on and keep it in place. Taking a look at the details of this large light bluish gray section, although very kind of plain and just a chunk of light bluish gray, I included some cracks that are filled with dark orange that I am very proud of. This one in particular, you can see there are quite a few different techniques to get those dark orange tiles held in place, and I am very happy with how that crack turned out. There's one on this side, which I am a little less happy about, and I tried to keep that accuracy of the sand where it would really only get wedged in these cracks on certain sides. So on the far side there is light bluish gray instead of the dark orange, and I think that turned out pretty nicely. The final crack is probably the one I'm least happy with. It feels really kind of square. You can see it has a right angle, which isn't my favorite for these kind of natural cracks. And then the only curve to it is pretty slight. The angle barely changes. So I feel like that one could have been better, but not too big of a deal. Overall, looks really good and adds a lot to this pillar. I may end up redoing some of it and adding some kind of detail, but I just wanted to kind of get a basic shape and block figured out to see exactly what kind of techniques I would need to use. And if you look closely, it actually switches from just bricks stacked up to snot technique to intersect the exterior pit wall. Moving just left, we can look at the new terrain that I have built, which I am super happy with. The kind of terrace here in the corner I think just makes kind of a really nice cubby between the pillar and this terrain, and with this probably curving back a little bit near the top of where the terrain ends, it'll make this really nice kind of crescent or semicircle shape in this gap. And I might put some kind of tree here or something like this, a dead branch type thing, into the cliff or rockwork, and just to kind of add something to make that semicircle look kind of filled and interesting. Now, taking a look at the rest of the terrain, I went with, again, pretty layered and simple, kind of just slopes with snot techniques. In a couple places I was able to get a little more detail, such as these cheese slopes here. I was able to double up the tan layer and just cut out a medium nougat, part of the medium nougat layer, which is good because I'm almost fully out of medium nougat slopes, and I will need to do an order to complete this terrain, but I should only need medium nougat. I have enough dark orange for sure, and probably enough tan. Pulling back, you can see I added a few extra details to this plateau section of the terrain that I got completed last episode. Just a few plants, and this dead tree, which I am really happy with. I love the use of that satchel. It's actually one of my favorite pieces for these small little trees. It just holds everything together really well. And then I added this little hill, which is nothing special, just a couple slopes. Real quick before moving on to this wall over here, I wanted to mention these gap fillers along the top of the pit. This is not the final product. I'm kind of just messing around with what fits in the gap. I found out that these long blaster rifles work really well at holding these skis in place, but sadly only with like every other panel. For some reason they don't like to stay up in, I think, 4 of them. This one, this one, this one, and this one wouldn't stay. Sadly, to make it like a pattern, I had to drop this one down, which was one of the best held in, like these ones. I'm still working out exactly how to make this look good, or if I do want to change these skis out with something else. If I end up staying with something with the skis, I will have to order more because I don't have enough to do all these gap fills on the exterior and on the top of the pit here. So I'm gonna hopefully try to figure something else out that doesn't use the skis, because I would prefer to not order many more pieces for this section of the mock. The final bit of progress I have to show you this episode is the wall that intersects the exterior of the pit. Now, this is about 3/4 of the whole wall. I'm still working on this top part here that intersects the pillar, and that is a lot more complicated, mainly because of the exterior wall and just kind of how this whole wall doesn't want to work out in this corner with this wall here. A lot of walls that intersect, and very complicated, especially because of how slowly the angle changes, as well as how small the angle is. You can see that it needed one of these, I believe, 3x12 wedge plates, just to get the first angle, and then the next one I needed to match up one of those 3x12 wedge plates with a ton of 2x4 wedge plates, and I was able to achieve a pretty tight intersection. The bottom section is a lot nicer than the second part, but overall very hard to notice that small gap. I did have to fill a couple gaps here because how this whole thing combined. There was this long gap that's very unfillable. There isn't a wedge plate that fits, and slopes don't fit in this gap either, so I had to figure out something like this to fill that. Now, at the top here, I have actually gotten pretty close to figuring out the angle. The cheese slopes plus this 3x6, yeah, 3x6 wedge plate. Lines up pretty much perfectly. You can see all I need to do is figure out how to connect this and fill that remaining gap with the wedge plates as well, which I'm not too sure exactly which ones they need to be. I still need to figure that out too. And then on top of that, I need to figure out exactly how to make the wall go straight up at the end and line up with the studs on the exterior wall of the pit. Overall, this whole section of the mock gets really complicated, but as soon as you reach this, what is that, like 9 studs out, or the 10th stud out, which will be on this second base plate area, it gets super simple. It's just a ton of these slopes and these slopes with big section of brick. So overall, this is going to be the hardest part of this wall, and so far I have made some really good progress. And the reason this episode was slightly underwhelming maybe, and on top of that a little shorter than previous episodes, is because of how long this wall took to design. This was about, I want to say, half of my time spent these past 2 weeks, the other half on the terrain and the pillar, which is pretty surprising for the size difference. Now, I didn't show you a look at the back, mainly because it is pretty boring. The panel actually removes really easily. It's just connected by one of these hinge bricks. Pretty flimsy. Hopefully I can connect it somewhere else as well. But you can see the panels are all connected pretty simply. Just some ball joints for these this bottom section, and then moving up it gets a little more complicated because of the kind of size constraints, and so I had to do some kind of weird techniques, not necessarily complicated, just using plates instead of hinges and stuff. And then this is where it got really tight and packed. You can see I had practically no room to fit anything in this top section. And that all just connects on and lays against this, whoops, doesn't connect anymore, but it lays against this support here, which I do have to fix this whole support system. I have to redo that for next episode because this top portion up here isn't support enough to continue and have it the correct angle. So, next episode I will be dealing with the rest of this wall and moving back to the interior probably, because I am not necessarily running out of pieces for the terrain and the pillars, but I just need a few pieces that I don't have. It's more just that I can make more progress on the interior of the base in one episode than anything else, and also it will be a lot more interesting progress. Anyways, that is going to wrap up this episode. I really hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing with notifications on so you don't miss any future updates to this mock and any future videos that I upload on this channel. And stay tuned for the next episode of building an Imperial Refinery in LEGO, because I will have some really interesting progress, not only on that wall that intersects the pit, but also the interior of the base. And thank you guys so much for watching. See you in the next video.